All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Health Optimization Medicine podcast. I'm one of your hosts today. I'm Dr. Scott Sherr. I'm here with the lovely and amazing Jodi Duval, all the way from Perth, Australia. Hello, Jodi. How are you today?
Hi, Scotty. You're too kind.
And it's just the two of us, right? So usually there's a whole faculty group, but today it's actually special because out of all the faculty at our nonprofit, a Health Optimization Medicine practice, well, Jodi and I are the only ones with children currently, although one of our faculty has a daughter along the way coming soon. But Jodi and I have spoken a lot together about parenting and about pregnancy. And so today what we're going to do is give you a little bit of a tour of health optimization in parenting, in pregnancy, and those kinds of ideas, because we all want to optimize our own health, right? But how do we do this as a family? How do you do this with the children? How do you do this in a partnership when you have a spouse that you're also hanging out with and may or may not listen to anything that you want or do? So Jodi, I want to start off this one because I know you've done a full masterclass as part of our ecosystem on health optimization and parenting. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about some of the finer points related to that as we kind of then delve into actually having the babies themselves, kind of thing. So
absolutely. So I focus a lot in my practice, and therefore it comes into the health optimization practice. And I obviously like to give a bit of a differing piece of information, because we cover adults quite a lot, males, females in the adult ranges. And so doing the masterclass for me was really important because obviously we live it, it's in our lives. And also I see a lot of clients, children, pregnancy, fertility, and I tend to see what is going on with those particular groups. And it's gotten really quite scary. It's not workable, but it definitely is a little bit scarier in what I'm seeing come through to what I did 17 years ago. So, the masterclass itself covers the conception through to age 12. And really, because it is this, basis of the fastest period of human growth and biological wiring, from that preconception time and conception into age 12. So every system is developing so fast. We've got all of the interactions with hormonal, immune, neurological. And so with health optimization, we're looking at all the pillars there, and it really you can see how important each pillar is. So I focus mainly on the chronobiology, exposomics, and bioenergetics in the masterclass, because I found that was the most predominantly changeable components and the protocols that we can be using, and just the awareness around those. So we can dive into all that, but I really feel that we don't think about this as much as we should. Like, I create programs on fertility and preconception and the timeline, that 90-day timeline, but really we should be aiming to be at our optimal fertility for our whole, not our whole life, but that's what optimal health is that we're going to be ready to have babies at any moment, because that's the optimal health. So that's another way of viewing it, I think.
So Jodi, one of the things that you just mentioned there was preconception, and also that, when we are at most fertile, the most capacity to have a child is that we're most optimal, right? And I think what people don't realize is that our reproductive organs themselves, oocytes, eggs, have the most mitochondria per cell of any organ or any tissue in the body. So they're highly energy intensive, and sperm are not so far behind. And so mitochondria, the energy, the powerhouse of our cells, if those aren't working very well, where it's going to show up first is in places that have the highest energy demands. And that includes obviously your eggs and reproductive organs. And then of course, there's other areas that have lots of energy needs, like your brain, your heart, your liver, and musculoskeletal tissue. But I think what we do at HOMeHOPe, which I think is important here, is, and I know you and I agree, and this is kind of our framework, which is that we kind of go down from the organ level to what we call like the holobiont level. It's the idea that our body's really made up of cells, right? It's made up of, at its base, cellular cells themselves, both human and non-human cells. And these human cells especially, they make up every single one of our tissues, although we find bacteria, fungus, and virus in all of our tissues as well. But what we do is, instead of looking at the heart, the eggs, the sperm, the brain, we're like, okay, let's drop it down to the metabolomic level, because that's the level where you can measure what's called the holobiome. So those are big words, but what I mean there is a metabolomic level is the level of metabolism. It's what's happening real time in your cells right now, as compared to your tissue. Yes, you can see things that are happening, but the difference is that, like, the cells run all of your organs. And so if the cells are working well, just like you mentioned with health optimization, everything else is going to work well. Just like if you can, have babies, that typically means that you can also have a brain that's going to function well at the same time. So I think people don't realize that that's the case, right? So we have a lot of mitochondria per cell, and we, especially in the reproductive organs, and all of our cells have mitochondria except for red blood cells. And so we're kind of in this place now where, I know a lot of people are coming to your office having fertility issues at quite young ages, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Fertility is really on the down. And also from a perspective of male reproductive systems as well, we're seeing some shocking things. Children, as well, the health that is coming, and, insomnia I've never seen in children before, 10 years ago. Now it's just every second or every child having difficulties with sleep, allergies and immune regulation issues. You've got autoimmune in children, so much more than I would ever have seen before as well. But I think, from a health optimization perspective, there is a lot of fear still around treatment of these certain age groups or population areas. And for preconception, not so much. I feel there's, a little bit more that you can do. But still around pregnancy and in childhood, there is a lot of fear around optimization, medical treatment, what you can and can't do. And I think it is down to the lack of, obviously, data. We know research, can't be strong in these areas due to ethical reasons, but also because of clinical data and experience, we haven't yet gotten to the point where we can feel confident in that. And I think that's where I wanted to dive into more of the health optimization, because it is so safe. We've been doing it for so long. You can do it really well. You just have to use interpretational skills to be able to know what's suitable for that age range and do, your efficient data collection. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that the preconception aspect of things, it really is just true health optimization medicine in practice, right? It's really the idea of really optimizing your health from the ground up, looking at vitamins, minerals, nutrients, metabolomic testing. But I think what you're really driving at, and that's not easy, of course, it takes time and it takes effort. But what you're really driving at here, which I don't know a lot about, is how to actually work with children that have challenges, right? They're having sleep issues. They're having, maybe other kinds of anxiety and depression and things like that. What have you found to be some of the major ways that you can really leverage their biology? The nice thing about kids is that, they're very resilient. Typically, if you can get them early with things, you can often reverse them. What are some of the ways, or what some of the things that you've seen in kids that you've seen like significant improvements using some of these frameworks, whether it be testing or not?
Yeah. Kids, for me, they're easiest, because they're so responsive, and they also just tell you how it is. Once you get their respect and their trust, they will just obviously, go with what you say, but also they will just tell you how it is. They sort of feel it to a degree once they understand their bodies. So, it starts really basic there, and you can start with the lighting, you can start with education with the parents. A lot of appetite regulation issues I see in children because of chronobiology, from the light perspective, and they're not actually getting the natural sunlight. They're in front of computers too much. They're wearing, Apple Watches and, things that have got EMF on them, which is not ideal, and getting their parents to actually listen to them. There's a huge anxiety component in children at the moment because there is just way too much going on, and there's no nervous system regulation that they are learning and So parents are having to look at breathing techniques with them. And I know you know these very well, Scott. You've taught me quite a lot in this field as well. But children need to be taught this. They need to be guided through this. And as they get a lot older, rapid changes are happening. They're shifting in what their bodies are doing. So they need guidance in this. But nutrition, I feel, obviously, we can always sharpen nutrition with children, but it is this relation with we are eating too much and not of the right nutritional quality. And so they are starving. And so when you correct nutrients from a very basic point of view, all of their appetite regulation comes back, and they don't want to crave, sugars, and you change their behaviors and their ways of looking at foods, and they understand their bodies and how they feel under those circumstances. My kids were the best example for this. My son, we went out to lunch just on the weekend, and he's looked at his big plate of like fried chips on his plate, and he's like, "Mum, I still know I can only have 2 or 3 of these and I'm done. Like, I know I'm going to feel rubbish. Why would I make myself feel rubbish?" I'm like, "I know, bub. Like, exactly. You can just leave it. Don't worry about it." So, and he was like that when he was really little, because he would feel unwell and he was very sensitive to those sorts of foods. So, they become their own best teachers, and also parents' teachers, once you actually give trust in them for listening to their bodies. But, I think environment as well. I do a lot of cleanup of the environment for the parents. So obviously you're looking for the heavy metals, you're looking for the VOCs. I get a HEPA filter in their room. So anything that is creating an unsafe environment, whether it's a nervous system regulation or a body and cell, issue, then we try and correct all of that. And they generally respond within weeks. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's nice to have children and see how fast they respond to certain things. I mean, having children ourselves, we know you do something different with them, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness, like you can practice, various techniques on them that you're trying on yourself that take you years, but they can get in a day, in 5 days or whatever. I think it's interesting, right? Because you're talking about changing the environment, you're optimizing that. You're talking about optimizing their sleep, their circadian rhythms, their light exposure. You're talking about their food, of course. But there's one problem here, or maybe 2 problems, Jodi. Their parents.
Yeah. Well, that was my question to you, Scott, was going to be, in terms of, obviously you see a lot of children, you have a lot of children yourself. Testing wise, do you think it makes a big data shift in also parents' mind if you see something in front of them? And what sort of testing do you recommend for children? I know we talk about the health optimization principles and what we test, but it's not always possible for children and for parents to do that. So, what do you see as sort of the gold standard that we can be looking at also as a convincing argument for the parents?
Yeah. So what's interesting, Jodi, is that I don't actually see children in clinical practice. I never did, because I never really trained in children, as a kid, as an adult, and in my internal medicine practice, I would see adults, right? Sometimes I would see, teenagers and things like that at the most. But, what I found, at least over the years with having children, is that, most of the time, I would say about, the majority of time, it's not required to do testing in kids. I think that there are definitely exceptions to that rule. And I've sent many children over the years to practitioners who see children. And what I always hear about the testing, and I always hear about the results, is exactly what you described, Jodi. It's like everything has to be seen in context, because there is if you do a GI panel on a kid, it's not supposed to look like an adult. But then if you have overgrowth and dysbiosis and, things like, well, then what do you do about it, right? Do you start them on, massive antimicrobial protocols like you do an adult, or do you not, right? So there's lots of different ways to go about this, which I don't pretend to be an expert in. But I think that what I've seen in my kids, at least, and you mentioned this really, I think effectively, which is that once you start nutrient optimizing them, getting them on good gut stuff for their belly, you don't have to check kids for labs as often, because they're going to self-correct. They have a much higher capacity to self-correct once they're given the tools to do it. But I think the challenge, and I was alluding to this with my question for you, is the parents, right? And oftentimes it's not the kids that are the issue. As you said, Jodi, like kids are pretty easy most of the time, but it's actually it's the parents and trying to change their habits, especially if the parents don't agree on what the situation might be. And I think that's the biggest one that I've seen. And I've seen this, my father, Dr. Alan Sherr, who's a chiropractor for 45 plus years in New York, and he's worked with a lot of autistic kids over the years. And this is the biggest thing that he sees. If he can get their diet and their lifestyle, their circadian rhythm, everything all squared away, like they do dramatically better. But then the parents have to sign on and do those things too, right? Exactly. It's not like you can have a kid sit at the end of the table and feed him special food. Like, no. Everybody else has got to do it too. And everybody's got to sign on. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And it's like reverse enabling on either side. You hope you can enable the family to see like, oh, wow, the kid's doing so much better. Let's all do this. But it happens on the other side where nobody wants to do it. So the kid's not doing it either, And so I think the biggest thing I've seen, especially with family friends and with my kids' friends over the years, is just, the significant dysregulation. And I think you really hit the nail on the head. It's like, it's a word that we've been throwing around more recently. It's, safety. And I think that it's a physiologic and psychological safety, right? Our kids need to feel psychologically safe, that they're protected, that they're loved, that nobody's going to be running in to hurt them, but they also need to feel like cellularly safe as well. And that's what, a lot of the work that we do, it sort of crosses both paths, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think I'll add to that in terms of what I see in clinic and testing. Like, obviously young kids, you wouldn't always need to be doing this, but I find iron testing, the basics, what we know is a higher nutrient demand. And some parents don't realize that these things are necessary in the diet. And if they're not actually hitting the targets very well, then sometimes the data can actually give you that, especially if you've got split families and you're trying to, tell different pieces of information to different sides of the family. But what I have found to be quite useful in changing parents' behaviors around children is the food intolerance testing. So I do find that this, especially if I can know in more of the older children that they are having specific reactions, and we need to create a little bit more of a idea around dietary focus. And if they've got a certain number of, small list of foods that they can't have for the moment for a short period of time, then it makes it a lot easier than a broad elimination diet for the parents. And I see some dramatic results. I've had a client recently, her daughter, and she came in and she was half the size just from fluid that had left the body from an inflammatory reason. And
Wow.
so by reducing some of the foods down and now understanding that, she tells me like she loved chicken. It was the only food she would eat. It came up on her intolerance testing. And she now tells me, she's like, do I have to go back to eating chicken? Because I know how bad it made me feel. I'm like, well, yeah, we introduced it slowly and we'll see how your body is coping with it now. But it's, I think that from my perspective can be a very valuable test if we're needing to change habits dramatically. But it all is proof in the pudding. Once the child starts to behave better, concentrate better in school, the teachers are not commenting to the parents or emailing the parents and they're sleeping better, then it's all proof in that. And the parents are like, well, I'm on board now. I can see it works.
Yeah, you mentioned sleep there, which I think is such a big one, for adults, but I mean, especially for children, right? Because kids need more sleep. They have much more sleep pressure. They're running metabolically at a higher level. And so it's always like a push and pull in my house about getting the kids to sleep versus letting them stay up and read. That's usually like the push and pull. My wife wants everybody to read. I'm like, yeah, but everybody's got to go to bed. And so it's, I used to be much more of a stickler about the red lights and things like that. But I realized the kids aren't as sensitive. My kids at least aren't as sensitive to that, but they are sensitive to not getting enough sleep. Right. And so if they don't get enough sleep, it does show up, and then it's going to affect their gut. It's going to affect their mood. It's going to affect everything else along the way. So it's one of the things where, like, as a parent, it's not easy, right? Because, when you have a young kid, they have to nap all the time, and then they're older and like you're still going to bed early. And then they're waking up in the middle of the night and all those kinds of things. It's difficult for our circadian rhythms, for sure. It's important to keep ourselves optimized as parents too, right? And I think that, Yeah, parent optimization is big. I mean, you and I were talking about like, before we started recording about like heavy days of stress with work all day and then kids. I mean, what are the things that you're doing as a parent for self-care is absolutely essential. Because this is what I've said this a bunch before, but like if my son walks in the door after like at 4:00 in the afternoon and says, "Hey, Dad, I had this happen at school today," and I say to something like, "Why did you come in this room without knocking? Like, why did you do this?" Right? Whose fault is that? Just there, like I just got him upset about him coming into the day, and I realized that it's a nervous system regulation thing for me, and if you yell at your children, it's because your nervous system isn't regulated, right? And that unless it's like something serious where like they're in danger of hurting themselves or something, right? That's different. But in general, it's hard for parents to realize this because we're tired too. We have a lot going on. But if you can reorientate yourself to go, okay, this is my nervous system, this is my physiologic safety, both psychologically and physiologically, that I need to do at the same time, then I show up and become a better parent. I think that's a huge shift for a lot of people.
For sure. And I think they pick up on it as well. I will walk in the door and my daughter will be like, "Oh, you okay, Mum?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. She's like, "Oh, you had a big day?" I'm like, yeah, I kind of have actually. Yeah. And
they can sense it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. They can sense
my
it.
kids sense my tone. Like if my tones are slightly different, like they're like, "Dad, are you all right? Are you angry?" I'm like, "I'm not angry. I'm focused. I got some stuff to do. It's all good." Right. But they sense that, right? And like, I remember when my wife was like studying for some tests, like at land, she was all stressed. Like the kids had been sleeping like through the night forever. And then all of a sudden they're up all night, right? I'm like, and she's like, "Why are they up all night? I have to test tomorrow." Like, it's because of you. It's because of, it's your vibe in it, right? Your vibe in the stress, So and that's okay. Like that's part of being a parent and an adult. But I think in the end, what we're really trying to convey to all of you listening today is that health optimization in parents is as important as in children and vice versa, right? But we don't have to be perfect at it. The nice thing about having kids is that they're very resilient, thankfully, And so if it doesn't go well or things aren't going well, the great news is that you can shift and you can change things and you can teach them and you can teach yourself by teaching them how to change, and then just changing the light, changing their food a little bit, trying a little bit of something else, like work on some good stuff for their belly, work on ways to de-stress a little bit better, talk about breath work. Like there's lots of things that you can do. And it doesn't always have to be relegated to checking labs, although it can be helpful at times. Any final words, Jodi?
Yeah, I think they live by example. And what I've tried to do, especially it gets easier as they get a little bit older, but now my daughter will join me for a workout, a couple of times a week, and she's learning that now. I had a big chat to my son because he's having nervous system regulation issues at the moment with stress and school and overwhelm. And so we've scheduled in a meditation session every day together because we're going to keep each other on track, right? So we can actually bring them along for the ride and have them there. And it's a time that you can connect together. You don't have to then just be doing all fun stuff. You can actually just doing nourishing work with them. And this sort of thing I've always believed in. I don't stop my routines. I bring them into my routines so they can actually see what that looks like. So I'm not self-sacrificing. And that's my biggest thing as a parent, I think, is that I've held close to my heart, is that I will show them what type of person I want to be, and therefore they don't see me sacrificing myself. So, family is a part of life versus the self-sacrifice. So that's always been the biggest part for me.
I love it. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Jodi, it's been another fun episode of the Health Optimization Medicine podcast. Let me try that again. Health Optimization Medicine podcast. We are so happy that all of you have joined us. We are, we're parents ourselves. If you like this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any comments or questions, you can always find us. You can check it out at HOMeHOPE.org. We have lots of different courses for you. If you're a practitioner, you can check them out. We also have a conference in October 2nd and 3rd in Chicago. This year, if you're a practitioner, we have continuing medical education credits. You can come see a bunch of speakers. It's going to be great. Jodi's going to be there. I'll be there. Jodi's flying all the way from Australia, her favorite trip every year to come to America to hang out with us. Maybe one year we'll go to Perth and have our conference there. But 2 days of speakers, it's going to be great. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Health Optimization Medicine podcast. Bye, everybody.
See everyone. Bye.